Hi, welcome back to my channel. So, first of all, I want to do a little disclaimer. Don't get distracted by my voice. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather and I've got the flu, so does Martine, which is a bummer. And also my face is puffy because I got my wisdom tooth out, one of them. And yeah, I'm okay. I'm over it, honestly. Why? But I'm okay. So for today's video, I thought I'd film my birth story for you because I have a little bit of a guilty pleasure with everything birth, pregnancy, babies. Yeah, seriously, a guilty pleasure. It's a bit embarrassing and weird. No, not embarrassing, I wouldn't say it's embarrassing, but since I was a little girl, I would binge watch everything about it because I find it fascinating, what our bodies can do. And also how cute are babies, honestly. How is it even possible? Only God can do such thing. So without further ado, I know it's really late to be filming a birth story because my son is 9 months old, but I didn't have a YouTube channel before, and yes, I could have filmed it, but I didn't. So better late than never, right? Let's jump right into it. So I think it's only wise to start this birth story video a few months before the actual birth because I was actually considered a high risk pregnancy because my son was measuring small. He wasn't born that small, but that's for later on. So at around 28, 29 weeks, I guess, I had what I thought were contractions, but they weren't as bad as people were describing them. So I'm like, what is it that I'm feeling? I went to the doctor and he said, yes, you're having contractions because your cervix is really low and this baby can come out anytime now. And I'm like, what? Also, this baby is measuring way too small. And I'm like, honestly guys, I freaked out. I left the office crying my heart out. I went to the car, my husband stayed to pay the appointment, and I'm like, what? I felt like such a failure, and I was put on bed rest immediately. So a couple weeks later, we visited another doctor. I'm babbling, I'm sorry. We visited another doctor, and she said, well, yes, the baby is measuring a bit small, but I don't think it's anything to be that worried about. Obviously, we have to keep looking at it because it was something in his brain. His arms and legs were a bit too small, so we did it. She said it's nothing to be super nervous about, but yes, be on bed rest, take it slow, be calm, we'll get through it. That's what I did. From 29 weeks until the very last bit, I was on bed rest. And it sucked, honestly. Third trimester, you're like, hurry up, I want to meet my baby. And then on top of that, I was having contractions every single day, so many contractions. I actually rushed the hospital, the emergency room, I think about 5 or 6 times before I actually had him. So we would go there, my husband's like, are you sure this is it? And we would get all pumped up, so happy to meet him. Also nervous because it was so early on, but nothing happened, thankfully. So I ended up having to get some shots to develop his lungs and everything else quicker, as we thought he was going to get here so soon, but he didn't. So that's a little backstory. I was in pain. My birth started way before because I was dilating, I was having contraction, my cervix was low. Yeah. So fast forward to 38 weeks and 2 days. Actually 38 weeks, let's do that. So I went to my OBGYN and she said, well, this is weird because we thought your baby was going to be born at 30 weeks, which is not good. And 38 weeks, you can go go ahead, walk, do lunges, no more bed rest. And I'm like, yes. I was so thankful for that. So we started going on walks. And when I say walks, I mean We were walking 3-4 times a day, going up the stairs, down, and we were walking so much that my husband's like, oh my god, this baby needs to come. He didn't. Like, spoiler alert, he didn't. So at my 38-week appointment, because I was having appointments every single week, I said to my doctor, look, I'm so over this. I've rushed to the emergency room so many times. I'm in pain. Like, can we please do this? And she said, oh, well, because the baby is measuring small, I can actually do it. But we would have to wait a bit more, like not 38 weeks exactly. So come tomorrow to my office and we'll do a stretch and sweep. Not fun. Honestly, not fun. I went there the next day. She did it multiple times that day. And I said, ooh, I think he's coming. I was having contractions. I could barely walk. Like, I had contractions the entire time. I spent Christmas having contractions, New Year's Eve thinking he was going to be born. It didn't happen. But that day I'm like, this is a little bit even more painful. So I called her and she said, well, it was a Friday, by the way. She said, well, you can come now or you can wait until tomorrow and we'll just induce you and we know you will come tomorrow, instead of coming in late Friday night and having him be born in the middle of the night. I might not be there, and we just decided we would enjoy our last night as a family of 2. And Saturday would be baby time. And no, we did not sleep. I was so excited, honestly. I didn't fear it. I never actually had any kind of fear or anything. When I was considered high risk, I was nervous, yes. I'm like, it was going, like, I can't describe it. I just thought I would come home without a baby, and that's the worst feeling as a mom, because I felt like I was failing, honestly. But, okay, let's not get into that. So, January 18th, Saturday morning. We were supposed to go in at 9 a.m., which we did. It took a little bit longer to get admitted, but by the, I think, 10:30 or so, I was in my room. And I'll insert some videos and photos throughout this video. So, 10:30 a.m. they started pumping the fluids, and keep in mind I was already having contractions on contractions, and they always said this baby's coming, and this baby's coming, and they started like to speed up the process. My doctor wasn't on call, but she said she would be nearby and she would get in touch, and as soon as it kick-started, she would be there to deliver the baby, which she did. She was amazing, like top-notch. I cannot recommend her enough. 10:30 they started doing it. I was just chilling with my husband in the delivery room. We were walking everywhere, listening to music, smiling, laughing. It was a dream, honestly. But I was like, this baby is never going to come like this. Because yes, I was having contraction, but it wasn't worse than I was having like 10 weeks before. It was exactly the same, even though I was on Pitocin already. And I'm like, nurse, can you do something? I don't want to be here for like 3 days. So my doctor came in and she said, well, you're too fine to be in labor. And I'm like, yes, I think so too. And she said, well, we're going to pump that up for more than double the amount. And I'm like, oh boy. Honestly, she did it at around noon, I think. Yeah, probably. So she did that, and I said to my husband, well, you may go grab lunch or something, because I think this is going to happen quickly. So that's what he did. At around 1 p.m. I think, he went to have lunch and I stayed there. Contractions started to happen and I'm like so excited. Like honestly, I was in pain, trust me, but I was so excited. No pain relief was administered at this point, and I'm just like feeling it. And through every contraction, I'm thinking, this is it. I'm going to meet my baby soon. And one more contraction, I'm like, whoa, one step closer. I was so happy the entire time, honestly. So, back to the clock thing. 1 p.m. my husband went, and around, what, I would say 2 p.m. I honestly don't remember the times like too well right now. But I would say, yeah, 2 p.m. The nurse came in and said, oh, let me check you. And she said I was at a 2 or 3 centimeters dilated. And she said, well, would you like me to break your water? Because I think it's time. And I said, oh, well, of course, you can do it. And she said, well, but I do advise you to get the epidural before, because this, when I do it, it's going to speed up so fast. You're going to be in so much pain. And I'm like, well, thank you, but no. And she's like, no, seriously. And I'm like, no. But she was like, honestly, she did it like 6 times. I think she asked so many times, are you sure you don't want it? And I'm like, no, I just want to experience it. And she's like, but really? And I'm like, yeah, really. Like, later on, if I feel like I can do it, I'll stop and ask for it. But right now, I just want to know what it's like. One little thing I would seriously advise any pregnant woman to do is like, prepare yourself for the pain to be so bad. That's what I did. I was having such strong contractions, and I'm like, well, this is really bad, like honestly, really bad, but it could be worse. Honestly, I don't know how it could be worse, but I just, mentally, I prepared myself for so much worse. So, that helped me get through it. Around 2:30, yeah, she broke my water without an epidural, and I just lay there. She said, oh, well, just lay here for a bit, for like 15 to 20 minutes, and so that like you can get all the fluids out and everything, and this should happen really soon. And I'm like, okay. Remember, I was at a 3 centimeters at that point. At 2:30 p.m. I was at a 2 or 3, okay? Keep that in mind. So a little bit after, around 2:30, it was like they broke my water in 15 minutes after my husband was there from lunch. And I was like, whew, oh boy. I was breathing, I was walking across the room, and like when I had a contraction, I would stop and bend over the bed like, yeah, that was it. And I'm like, Bobby, I can talk right now. And then when the contractions slow down, I would like say a word or two, and then another one would come, and I'm like, honestly, I'm smiling right now, but it was bad. It hurts like a lot, like nothing I've ever experienced. And I remember I felt like everything inside of me would come out. I felt it burning. I can't describe it. I would like to prepare some of you, but I can't describe. Wow, my God, I can't describe it. Yeah, I felt that at around 3 p.m. My husband told me like, well, you seem to be in a lot of pain. I'm like, yes, I am. I was on like all fours, bending on the bed, and I'm like, Bobby, please grab my back, don't stop. And he was doing like this motion in my lower back, and that would distract me a bit from the pain. That was a lot of relief. He's like, oh, my fingers are hurting. I'm like, what? Your fingers hurt? I have a watermelon coming from down there and your fingers hurt? So yeah, he continued to do it, obviously. And he's like, oh, would you like an epidural? Do you want me to call the nurse? And I'm like, well, maybe, yeah. Because I thought like the pain was unreal, but I thought it would get a lot worse. And no way I thought I was so close to giving birth, so I said yes to an epidural. We called the nurse, like she came right away, and she said, well, you will have to wait about 30 minutes because the anesthesiologist is doing a C-section. And I lost it, honestly, I lost it. I was in so much pain, and that nurse was so rude. My husband actually told her she couldn't walk inside our room anymore because she was actually that mean. She was really rude. And she said, oh, you moms think you're strong and you don't want the epidural and now you're suffering, but guess what? You're going to have to wait. That's the last thing you want to hear when you're in labor. Honestly, trust me. So she walked out and I'm like, breathe. I would say around 3:15 something. It took him like 15 minutes, I guess. He walked inside the room and I'm like, oh, thank goodness you're here. Let's do it. I was having contractions non-stop, like one after the other, like not even 30 seconds in between. And he would say, oh, sit still. I'm like, well, I can. It was a whole process. It was hard, but he did it. So I told him, when am I going to stop feeling this? And he said, well, in 1 or 2 contractions, you'll be okay. 1 or 2 contractions came and I felt everything. And I'm like, whoa, excuse me. I asked the nurse to check me. 3:20. I will not forget that time. 3:20. Keep in mind, at 2:30, not even an hour before, I was at a 2 or 3 centimeters, right? The nurse checked me. She said, well, it's not actually necessary to check you right now because we just did like an hour ago and you were so far away from 10, but I'll just do it because you're telling me to. And I'm like, yes, he's coming. And she's like, oh no, sweetheart, you think he is, but he's not. And I'm like, I know I'm a first-time mom, but he's coming. And they're like, oh no. And that phase I will never forget. Honestly, I was laying down. I could see my big bump and my legs were spread apart for her to check me. And the only thing I saw was bump, legs, and her face going like this. And I'm like, what? What's going on? Is everything okay? And she's like, oh my God, you're at a 9. And I'm like, I'm at a what? My doctor wasn't here. She said to my husband, rush, get everything, let's go to the delivery room, because here in Portugal you have the dilation room and the delivery room, they're separate. So she told him to grab everything and get ready, and she rushed me to the delivery room. She also did another dose of the epidural because I was still feeling everything, and she said, well, you cannot open your legs right now, you cannot push, you cannot do anything, just sit still. Do you know how hard that is when you're just wanting to do it? It's barely impossible. So they immediately called my doctor, and she said she would be there in about 15 minutes or so, and they rushed me to the delivery room. On our way to the delivery room, the nurse was calling every single person, being like, come, you all have to come because I've never done this on my own. I'm like, by the way, I'm not trying to shame anyone. She was so sweet. She was nervous, I get it. I was nervous too because I heard that, but I was okay, honestly. I was so happy. And we did it. I was in the delivery room, my husband was getting ready to watch the entire labor, and I said, well, can we take pictures? And she said, yes, you can take pictures, but you cannot film. And I'm like, okay, but can you call my husband to be here with me right now? Because I honestly feel like my baby will come before the doctor is here, and I want him to see, of course. She said, yes, you'll get your husband right away. My husband was there. I started shivering because I was so nervous, and yes, I was still feeling everything, so no epidural. I would say 5 minutes or 10 later, another nurse comes in and say, oh, the doctor's parking your car. Everything, on that entire floor, everyone knew what was happening, and it was so funny. The nurse was like, she's coming. And I'm like, yeah, so is my baby. So 5 minutes later, the doctor comes in and she said, well, you can start pushing. I'm like, already? But you don't even have gloves on. And I'm like, yes, I'll do it. I start pushing, still feeling everything, and I'm like, one push through, and she's like, oh, he's almost here. I'm like, what? Right now? Keep in mind, the active labor was not even 2 hours, so I was in shock, complete shock. I did not believe what was happening. So I started pushing. I think in total I pushed like 2 or 3 times and he was out. When his head came through, TMI, I'm not trying to gross anyone out, but when his head came through, I'm like, oh my god, he's out. And then his entire body came through, and I honestly, it felt like an octopus, like, that's what happened, and it like, everything came out, and I'm like, Bobby, he was born, and I was in shock, honestly. They said, do you want me to place him on top of you? And I'm like, yes, of course. They placed him on top of me, and I started cutting his fingers, like, how mom of me, like 1, 2, 3, everything. He started crying, and I was so in shock. I'm like, wait, how is he already here? I was waiting for him to come for 10 weeks. So when he was born, in less than 2 hours, I was shook, honestly. I was so happy everything was okay, and I felt everything. The epidural did not work with me. Like, it started working after the delivery. I got stitched up. That's a whole different video I'll do for you, a postpartum thing. But I got stitched up. I felt everything, and after that I stopped feeling, which was frustrating, but it's okay. So he was born. He wasn't small at all. His estimated weight was actually 1 kilo less than he was born. He was born with 3 kilos, 250 grams, and 48 centimeters. He was born. My husband cut the umbilical cord. Honestly, the doctor was talking to me like, oh, you have to push now for your placenta, and she said a billion other things that I honestly don't remember because I was just so happy with my little family. I remember the nurses saying, wow, if this was your first son, on the second baby, you're going to, like, if he'll come in 30 minutes or so, because this was so fast that they were just saying you were born to have babies, because this was incredible. And I felt so strong and empowered. I guess that's it. I loved it. I honestly miss it so much. And yes, I'm crazy. I miss the delivery. I'm crazy. Saying it out loud, it makes me sound even crazy, and I didn't realize what I'm saying. But yes, it was such a special day for me. I wish I had a birth vlog, but my husband wasn't into it. So maybe next time we'll see. But honestly, it was the best day of my life. Completely. Like, the entire experience was so sweet to me. And yeah, so a couple tips for all expecting mamas would be to, 1, always prepare yourself mentally for worse. Like, think the pain will get stronger. And yes, you're still a mom if you want the epidural. I was shamed for that when I said I want to enjoy it, and if that means having the epidural, then I'll do it. I was shamed for saying that. People told me I wasn't a mom if I did that, if I didn't suffer for my baby, which is ridiculous, honestly. You're a mom if you have a C-section, if you have a natural birth, a vaginal birth, everything, you're still a mom. So just keep that in mind. Second tip would be to enjoy it and think every contraction that goes by, you're one step closer to meeting your baby, and that is the most special thing of all. And my last tip would be to don't have a plan. Like, things, 99% of the time, things don't go to plan, so just don't, okay? Don't try to put that pressure on your body. It will do what it wants to do, and just trust. Enjoy the process, and that's it. So I hope you enjoyed my birth story, and I keep in my mind it's a birth vlog, and I'm like, no, you're wrong, it's a birth video. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope this is like another experience and story for some of you that are expecting or just are curious like I was. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye.